shoot is complete without a nip of sloe gin. One of the most recognisable British brands is Foxdenton, both by the bottles and the boss, Nick Radcliffe, and his colourful trousers, selling his wares across the country at game fairs, shooting shows and other rural events.
So we're here to make a fantastic product and sell it to people who do what we like doing. That's really what it's about.
Today we lift the lid, or uncork the bottle, on what goes into making a delicious fruit liqueur for the field. Plus, Nick will rock your sloe gin making world by letting us into a few trade secrets.
That's slightly top secret, that is.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I'll blob it out.
No. You can keep that in.
So grab your Kiln jar, pound of sugar, and let's begin. It all starts with the fruit.
These are plums from last year. They're purple Pershaws. And what we're going to do is, they're just beginning to defrost. We're going to put them into the bags. Once they're in the bags, we then ziplock the bags and the bags go into the gin. We've already loaded vat 11. What's the other ones, Hayley?
2, 4 and 6.
So we've got 4 vats which are going to be filled today. And you'll see that the vats are about halfway full. Once we get the fruit in, it goes right the way to the top. Sometimes you'll see that it looks as if the fruit doesn't fit in, but certainly towards the bottom it's very frozen. As it defrosts, it all sinks down.
And from start to finish then, Nick, it would take how long?
For this process, will be done in an hour and a half, but for the whole process, between, and it depends on the fruit. For soft fruit like raspberries, that might be a 3.5 week process. For plums, it's more like 4 months. Sloes, it can be 6 or 7 months.
As you'd expect, Foxdenton started with the obligatory Kiln jars, working up to buckets and now vats.
It was exactly that. It was into Kiln jars with the fruit. It was fruit from our garden or from around the village where we live. And then that very quickly we knew we couldn't do Kiln jars. And so we moved to these buckets. We would have 50, 100, eventually 200 of these buckets filled with gin and fruit.
It's a well-rehearsed process. Bottomless buckets act as a funnel. Tom, Richard, Nick and Hayley fill them with fruit which ends up in pillowcases, tied off and lowered into the gin. The smell is amazing. Time for our first trade secret. Do I need to prick the fruit?
Old-fashioned recipes always say prick the fruit. Yeah. And to various degrees of obscureness, prick it only with a silver fork, prick it only with a thorn from the blackthorn tree it came from, and other rubbish like that. Firstly, this is what a quarter of a tonne of fruit looks like. Are we going to prick each one? Of course we're not. Secondly, we've done loads of testing, and the reality is if you've got frozen fruit like this, you just don't need to prick them. We've done tests on pricked fruit and unpricked fruit, and nobody can tell the difference.
The Foxdenton brand comes with a very real family estate dating back to the 1300s, and the Radcliffe family has an extraordinary military and hunting history. This heritage helped shape Nick's idea of taking an old family recipe and turning it into an artisan product.
I would love to say that my grandfather taught my father, but the reality is my grandfather's cook taught my father how to make liqueurs at home. My father taught me. We've been making them forever. We're nothing unusual. Everybody does this. Show me a man who shoots or hunts or fishes who hasn't made sloe gin or damson gin or plum gin or made something like that. Everybody's done it. It just so happened that at one point in my life, I was in a position where my late wife had sadly passed away and my children weren't particularly old, and I wanted to do something which allowed me to look after them much more. And I'd been shooting, and a friend of mine had said, "Do you know, Nick, you could sell this. This is really good." And I went, "Do you know, you're absolutely right. And I know who I'll sell it to. I know exactly who I'll sell it to. I'm going to sell it to everybody I know who shoots."
Back to the gin, and we have timed our trip to see one of the vats being drawn off. Now, homemade sloe gin might be allowed to have a few leaves and insect legs floating around in it. Nick makes sure that won't happen here.
Each of these is a sheet of compressed filter paper. So the liquid has passed through each sheet before it is then pushed out through here. Now that will then be ready to be alcohol tested and prepared for the next stage, which is sugaring.
Once the vat is emptied, the pillowcases are left to drain for a couple of days to make sure that every drop of liqueur is collected. Now, another myth is that the drink gets more potent with time.
I cannot tell you how many times I'm at shows and people say, oh, let me see if this is as good as mine. We never say it's better, we just say it's different. But they will often come up with a phrase like, well, ours is really strong. We've left it for years and it's really strong. Oh, it blows your head off. You know, because we put lots of sugar in and the sugar turns to alcohol. Now that is a complete myth. That is 100% not true. And I'll explain what's happening. People are mistaking the strength of the flavour for the alcoholic strength. Now, it's true that if you leave the fruit in for longer, you can get a more intense flavour, but the flavour also begins to change over time. But the one thing that doesn't happen is that the sugar doesn't turn into more alcohol. The more sugar you add, the weaker the alcohol content. So we do multiple alcohol tests because we have to account to HMRC for every 0.1 of a litre of alcohol, and our returns are measured in 4 decimal places to keep HMRC happy. So I know how much alcohol there is.
Nick's big seller is, of course, the sloe gin. Every year they bring out something new. One that's proving to be a hit is sloe whisky.
Now, I personally don't like the taste of whiskey, but Spencer, who is in charge of nearly all of the new product development, made some of this for himself, and it was so amazing. We said, right, we're going to make some. So we found a supplier of whiskey, a 3-year-old blended whiskey, and then we made this batch. And so far this year, in 2025, this is the #1 seller at every show we go to. I think primarily because people are amazed. The flavour is so fantastic. Genuinely, if you don't like whiskey, don't worry. I don't. You can drink it. It tastes fantastic. So this is the winner. But one of the things I often say when I'm showing people sloe whiskey, and I can use sloe gin to make my point, is that sloe gin is not just to drink as a little nip in the winter. The other thing that you can do with it is you can really mix it. Now, here's one I prepared earlier. This is called a sloe peddler. Now, why am I hiding it? Because I want, in fact, Amy, you're going to be my guinea pig. Come here.
Round of applause for Amy.
Now then, try that. I don't think you've ever tried it before. Just try that.
That's really good.
Isn't it
Really
amazing?
refreshing. Wow.
It's really refreshing.
Wow.
And that, I mean, Fever Tree give it a rather posh name, calling it Sicilian lemonade, but it is good old-fashioned bitter lemon. Sloe gin and bitter lemon, honestly, it's fantastic.
The last stage in the process is the labelling and bottling. This batch of apricot gin is heading over to a client wanting to add their own label.
We make own label products for lots of shoots and lots of hunts. We help hunts raise money through the Hunt Supporters Club. We've backed all sorts of good causes around the field sports industry, and that's our focus.
Now we've saved the biggest sloe gin bombshell to the end: sugar.
The thing I would say is don't follow the old recipe, the old 1-1-1, which is a pint of gin, a pound of sugar and a pound of sloes. It'll come out far too sweet. The best way to do it is make some with no sugar, then draw some off, put it in a small pan, warm it very gently, not hot, just warm it slightly. Put your sugar in, stir it, it will dissolve over the low heat. Once it's dissolved, pour the whole lot back in, give it a shake, taste it. Not sweet enough, draw some more off, put more sugar in, rinse and repeat. My personal idea is that about 200 grams of sugar to about a litre is probably where you want to be aiming as your starting point, which is completely different to the 1-1-1 recipe. Because the one thing you can't do is if you put too much sugar in right at the beginning, you can't just add more gin. It doesn't work. That really does taste fairly unpleasant. So that's top tip.
Oh my goodness, you're going to revolutionise slow gin making in this country. You know that.
I'm not sure, but it certainly revolutionised it here, because now we can do it quickly, efficiently, and get a fabulous flavour. I mean, it really does taste good, and it looks fabulous when it's bottled. It looks really, really good.
There you have it. Go forth and be creative with your Kiln jars. Slow picking season is typically late autumn. Or if you can't be bothered, head to foxdentonestate.co.uk to order some online, or follow them on Instagram to find out which shows they are attending across the country. You might get to try before you buy.